Okay. Well, hi, this is John Sarver, and it's Thursday evening, and it's a My Solar Story session again tonight, sponsored by GLREA and My Son. And tonight we have the pleasure of having Marshall Clabeaux, who's going to talk about the MSU Student Housing Cooperative's Green Team Initiative and the solar projects they've been doing. And Marshall has been working at the MSU Student Housing Cooperative. He's also on the board there. And he's also been involved with a Michigan Mosaic Energy Cooperative, where they've been engineering some upscaled battery solutions. Marshall's been involved in the Clinton Global Initiative and the Sunrise Movement. And also, just last night, he got appointed to the GLREA Board of Directors. And so with that, I'd like to encourage everybody to mute themselves until after the presentation. And then, as I think you know, you can unmute yourself to ask questions directly of Marshall. But with that, let me turn it over to Marshall.
All right. Thank you, John. And thanks, everyone, for attending and having me. Really excited to be here. I've attended some of these in the past, so excited to share the story tonight. So as John mentioned, my name is Marshall Clabeaux. I'm a Lansing resident. I live in a cooperative house. I don't know if any of you are familiar of Rivendell Cooperative. It's been a West Side Lansing staple since 1972. But today we're going to share a little bit about our Green Team Initiative here. So we're a 17 home, 250 member cooperative owners in our network. 14 houses are in East Lansing, 2 are in Lansing, and 1 is in Meridian Township off of Okemos Road. And our goal is carbon neutrality. So what's a co-op anyway? Some people understand the word cooperation, but they don't necessarily understand that a cooperative is also a business model. So all cooperatives run on 7 cooperative principles. You can see in the graphic here, those principles. And then the MSU SHC in particular, we're a housing co-op. So there's credit unions, there's worker co-ops, consumer co-ops. Most people are familiar with food co-ops. The list goes on. So really, here's the fun, the Green Initiative history. I would be remiss to not point out the 17 homes here. That was our t-shirt back in 2017. That was a member of Phoenix House, the old mayor's mansion actually in East Lansing, made that, and I thought that's a real neat design there of all the houses. Looks pretty good on the t-shirt. But this actual initiative, it started back in 2017. We had a board member and sustainability fellow named Sam Burnt. Some of you might be familiar with Sam's work. He's actually off working for NASA now, so, you know, rocket scientist work, nothing easy. But Sam, he came to me, we were, ironically enough, I really wanted to put it on the slide, but I forgot to do it. In the basement of the Green Door, it's a bar off of Michigan Avenue in Lansing, at a Bernie Sanders rally. It was like an organizing meeting early in 2016, before the primary, and Sam had walked up to me and he said, "Are you Marshall?" And I was. And am. And I said, "Yes, what's up?" And he goes, "Hey, well, I live in the student housing cooperative, and I want to do something sustainable." And so I said, "Okay, well, let's what are we at? Where are we at?" And so we ultimately came to this idea of carbon neutrality, and that's where Sam kind of ran with it. And so you see his quote here. He says, "I brought up the idea like, hey, I want to make us 100% carbon neutral," and the numbers he crunched were amazing. Sam, he's working for NASA, so obviously he's pretty good with numbers. But he calculated how much CO2 the SHC was using as a 15 home cooperative at the time. And he came up with that number, and the last quote there, 853 pounds of CO2 a day. And so, as he said in their quote, he said, "This scared me." And so Sam took it to the next step. He reached out to Board of Water and Light. So in that second bullet there, he was able to work with a BWL worker named John Kroschak, and he's no longer with Board of Water and Light, so that's unfortunate. And BWL actually doesn't even do this grant anymore. I'm not exactly sure on the whole history on how it came about. I was in the back end of it where we met with John and From what I've heard, the story goes is that BWL had some extra money sitting around in their grant pool fund, and it was reaching the end of it, and it just happened chance that the SHC reached out at the right time, and we were able to receive a $50,000 grant. And so with that grant, we were able to, with our small but mighty maintenance staff, which I am a part of at the moment, we were able to exchange all of our refrigerators, all of our lighting, and all of our dryers as well. That was a big purchase. And that was huge. I mean, I don't know, we don't have the baselines of all of our energy consumption before this transition, but we do now. And so I imagine it was quite a bit of savings overall, the whole system. And so the number that Sam and I ultimately came up with to meet our needs was that top bullet point of 667. It really was 666, but for superstitious reasons, we bumped it up one to 667 300-watt panels. And what we aim to do is to not only aim these and deploy these in our cooperative, but really looking out on the bigger East Lansing and Lansing community. We realize that we probably don't have all the land, all the resource to actually be carbon neutral from that standpoint. And so as this project evolves, I can see us getting in the community and helping to deploy some of these solar panels. So this is kind of our pilot beauty here. This is actually the Great Lakes GLREA's annual photo winner. So I'm proud of that. It was a photo I waited for the opportune time. The fall colors really came out great, and yeah, went to the house once the installation was complete and snagged that pretty good photo. So how this came about was our board of directors back in 2017. Sam brought a proposal to the board, and as a democratically run organization, we have one board rep from each of our 17 homes. And so it was a unanimous vote to approve a $15,000 donation to Sam's Green Energy Fund. So with the $15,000 with a GoFundMe, and he did a $3,000 fundraiser with 3 different churches of East Lansing. I don't remember the specific 3, but all in all, we ended up getting up to $22,000. And so that's how we installed this first installation here. So that's 15 panels, 300 watts each. And in this whole process, this is on top of David Bowie Memorial Cooperative, which is across from the iconic Big B off of West Grand River there in East Lansing. RIP, they just tore down that Big B. It's kind of sad. But just up the road from there, you'll find this. It's a big white box. It says "Save Your Mother" or "Love Your Mother" on the front. Yeah, this solar installation's on top. And in that whole process of Sam getting the grant, the BWL, the funds from the co-op, David Bowie was actually going under head-to-toe renovation. So they have almost all new windows throughout the house. It was completely rewired and spray foamed. So you can just see that last bullet point is pretty incredible. I mean, and just being energy conscious in the house, they were able to decrease nearly 30,000 kilowatt hours, which is just, that's incredible. The best energy is the energy we don't use. So shout out to Sam and all those old co-opers. A little more on the system here. This is our VP of Facilities, Nikki. She unironically wore a Green New Deal shirt on that. That was the first day we went to check out the panels. There was actually, there's 3 rows, and this was just the first row. But I thought that photo with the clouds and the Green New Deal turned out, that's really fun. But there is potential. So to add more solar on this roof, you can see the roof is only about halfway filled. So I think we can double what's on top of there as we work to get to this 667 panels, carbon neutrality. And so we are still working with BWL on the official net metering program. It's really been a headache, not for BWL's fault per se, but just aligning all the parties. You have to align the solar installer, the East Lansing electrician, and BWL. all at once, and not to mention our fourth leg and then the fifth leg of COVID and a frozen latch to get up there. So it's just, we haven't got the official net metering going yet. So I can't report back on some of the energy that we've been getting. It's only been completely installed the end of October. And so we're still waiting on those numbers. I'll be happy to maybe come back in a year and give an update, or 2 years. But we still do have active donations available at the GoFundMe listed. That's the MSUSHC Green Energy Initiative. Welcoming funds there if you feel inclined to get involved. So to carry on to our carbon neutrality adventure and goals is my house right here, Rivendell Cooperative. So we're a 10 member cooperative, as I mentioned, on the west side of Lansing. It's a little different than the other houses of the network. We're technically a community cooperative. So the 14 homes in the East Lansing area we're referring to as campus cooperatives, just because they're usually a little more student-centered. But my house, like I said, we have 10 housemates, 2 cats, 2 dogs, 5 chickens, and 5 koi goldfish. So got a lot going on. At the moment, we have one, and it's actually a 300 watt solar panel. I got that in the state on our roof. And so that's that photo shown on the left here. And that panel comes to us in great honor and thanks to my good friend in the top right there. He goes by the Wizard, and he is quite frankly a wizard. And he donated through the Smith Energy Trust 30 solar panels back in the day to Michigan Mosaic Energy Cooperative back in 2015. And ever since then, the solar panels have been transferred, moved around, used for different projects, but 18 of them remain at Rivendell today. 4 of them are in California on a mobile solar trailer. 4 of them are on a solar trailer at the Fledge in Lansing. If folks aren't familiar, it's a incubator space. It's a neat operation. And we're looking to pull our house off grid. So one of my roommates, Will Lawrence, he's a co-founder of the Sunrise Movement. Really, the 2 of us together are crunching the numbers and trying to pull our house off grid. It's definitely not an easy task. Through Michigan Mosaic Energy Cooperative, John had alluded to that over the years we've been working on a battery upcycling program where we take old 18650 batteries. That's this right here, just a standard battery. They use these in electric cars, electric power tools, people's vaporizers use these cells. So over the years we've collected thousands of laptop batteries and broke them down, tested all the cells, sorted all the cells by the remaining life, and are at a point today where I'm waiting on a battery to come to Europe so I can make more batteries. But I'm using a K-weld machine, it's called, to spot weld batteries together. So once that part comes in, I'm ready to rock and roll on building a home power wall, if you will. And hopefully we can get, I'm still deciding on how many of these 18 panels ultimately will be used at Rivendell for this off-grid adventure. I would really like to see all of the houses have solar, even if it's in a small capacity. My current setup, this 300 watt that's mounted on the roof, it's not grid tied at the moment. I could very easily grid tie it, but I wanted to respect Board of Water and Light and some of their requirements, and I just haven't gone through those yet. I presently only use the panel to charge my e-bike. I have quite a beefy battery on my e-bike, 1400 watt hours with an inverter. So it's a mobile power bank. It's pretty fun. And that charges my bike if it's on at 0 and anywhere from 6 to 10 hours, depending on how sunny of a day. And even in the winter, it does charge my bike. So that's fun. And so what else is up today? That was kind of a overview of our physical solar that we have on our homes. But the MSUSHC sustainability efforts don't end there. As we all know in the circle, carbon neutrality doesn't end with just solar panels or wind power. It takes composting, it takes a reduced energy lifestyle. And ultimately, that's what the SHC Green Team is working on at the moment. We have an AmeriCorps Vista, which stands for Volunteer in Service to America, named Casey Pascus. She's our Climate Resilience and Development Vista. And so, as she mentions in this quote, many of our members are very eco-minded people, care about the environment, and so the co-ops really are. It's a neat opportunity for a project like this, because oftentimes you'll see students come and go, and these projects kind of get left behind. But when the houses stay behind, the projects stay behind, and usually there's other students that come in right behind that are interested in this kind of thing. So with the addition of the community co-ops that I live in, and it provides a little more stability in the membership to keep these things going. So we're on year 4 now of this project. So it's come a long ways. The Green Team, in addition to some of these solar projects, does trash cleanups and invasive species removal. And we're also planning an energy panel next week already that has a pretty robust panel. I'm really excited with how it turned out. Actually, John will be on it with myself moderating. We have MSU Power of Light, Lansing Board of Water and Light, Consumers Energy. We just confirmed today a member from the State Energy Office, Eagle, will be attending, as well as a member representative of Michigan Energy Options and an eco village down in Sylvan County, called Sylvan Neighborhood. 2 friends are spearheading that effort, and so we'll kind of hear what energy challenges they have from a development standpoint. So pretty excited about that panel. Assuming nothing goes crazy on Inauguration Day, we're ready to rock next Wednesday from 5 to 7. So please reach out if you haven't been able to find the link online. It's pretty readily out there. That bit.ly in the photo here, it's kind of hard to see, and it's a weird link. I don't really like those very much. I didn't make it, but at any rate, feel free to reach out to me for a link if you're interested. So thank you for your time and attendance. I haven't been keeping track, so let's see. Yeah, 7:20. I would just like to wrap up here that we sit in the shades of the trees we do not plant. That's one of my favorite cooperative kind of quotes and images there. The beauty of a cooperative to me is that you sit in the shade of the trees you don't plant. So Sam helped spearhead this effort. I'm keeping it alive, and hopefully it'll live beyond me. I don't know if I'll see the project through to carbon neutrality. As I mentioned, it's not an easy task, but hopefully these minimal efforts now will spark future generations of co-opers to lead the revolution. And furthermore, our website is msu.coop. We do have a new website that I recently developed and launched. It's just new.msu.coop. We'll be changing that over soon, but Michigan Mosaic Energy Cooperative, as John mentioned, that's another part of my efforts, and that website's listed there at the bottom, mmescoop.com. That shares a little bit more of our work, and yeah, really happy to stay till 8 answering questions. I worked through this kind of quick, but I would rather open it up for questions. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and really excited to be here.
Hey, thank you, Marshall. That was great. And could you stop the screen sharing, and then we can kind of see everybody? It'll be easier to, as I think most of you have participated before, if you just want to unmute and ask Marshall a question, go right ahead.
Well, this is John Freeman. Marshall, I just wanted to introduce myself. You sent me an email today to John Sarver as well, and I just wanted to say that I thought it was a really interesting presentation, and I think the whole model of trying to promote solar and renewable energy with a cooperative kind of business model is interesting, and I would like to learn more about it. And I just want to welcome you to GLREA, and we look forward to your energy and your ideas on the board, and really excited.
Thanks, John. And not really a question that you proposed there, but an interesting tidbit that if there are people in this space that are interested, I have been, I queued Tom Stanton, who I see is on this call. It's always good to see you, Mr. Stanton. I cued his brain to, so part of the I guess, an opportunity for this solar project is the savings are at a house level at the moment. So we put all these panels on one individual house. We want to capture those dollar savings that we all know are there for a revolving fund type idea to fund further projects. So I'm in the process right now of developing that. So it is, it's not developed yet, but that is another type of cooperative solar development model that I'm working on right now. So if folks are interested or seen ideas, happy to collaborate.
So this is kind of like a finance model that will help.
Hopefully, yeah. So the idea is that, let me grab my computer charger here. The idea is that we use these solar savings from the house level and we put them into the whole co-op system level. So I haven't developed it all the way yet, but some sort of finance model, yeah, would be what we're looking to establish here.
Well, we have been talking about the fact that financing is one of the key aspects of bringing solar to scale to beyond high income people. You know, we need to make solar available to middle class, low income people. And so I think these creative ideas are great. And we're also looking to apply for foundation grants. And there might be some foundations that are interested particularly in coming up with innovative financial mechanisms to promote solar to different communities that are underrepresented within the solar world, so to speak.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to working on those projects. So I do see a question here from Charles. How are co-ops different from co-housing? So thanks for asking, Charles. How co-ops and co-housing are different? I would consider them cousins. So I actually live next to a co-housing community that my good friend MC Rawthorne helped start. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's called Genesee Gardens Co-housing on the Lansing West Side. They're really a neat model. And sort of the difference is that co-ops, so my model of living is typically more resource shared. So I live with 10 roommates. We have 8 different bedrooms. We have 1 kitchen. A co-housing model is more of 1 family per home that comes together in a network. So it's both are networks of homes, but the amount of resource sharing and the actual day-to-day living is a little different. Co-housing typically has what would be called a common house. So all the members of the co-housing community, usually on Friday nights, for example, they do a potluck. And they also have a common garden outside of the common house. So that's kind of a little nuts and bolts difference. But they are quite similar in principles, if you will.
So some of this model that you're doing could be applied, carry over to people who are in a co-housing situation too, without too much of an adjustment.
Exactly. That's where I would like to see this grow, and that's why I've stuck with it so long. Is because it could be a really neat model for clusters of communities to go carbon neutral. And so that's precisely. Thanks for that, Charles.
This is John Gorley. And maybe this is a question for John Freeman more than to Marshall, but in the co-housing groups that I know, each individual family owns their own unit, like in a condominium. But in the housing co-ops, the cooperative corporation owns all of the real estate, and people just simply rent from the cooperative organization as tenants. I don't know for sure that the ones that you're talking about, Marshall, work that way, but it makes me wonder, and this is the question for John, is the fact that people own their own unit something that would keep them from sharing a community solar array? Do you know?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer because, first of all, community solar can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. I was on a phone call yesterday and today with DTE, and their definition of community solar is where they own the solar system and that rich people raise money to help low-income people get panels, which is maybe a version of community solar, but certainly is not the case that I'm kind of a classic case like Minnesota has, where a third-party developer will build a solar farm, or in this case, maybe the cooperative builds a solar farm, and then maybe some of the individual houses then buy panels from the farm, so to speak, and then the amount of electricity that those panels generate gets virtually net metered, so to speak, back to the home. But there are also tax issues as well. We support community solar where people can actually buy the panels, because then the cost to buy the panel goes down by virtue of the fact that they can take advantage of the investment tax credit, even though the panel is not on their home or on their yard, but it can be in some solar farm miles away. But the IRS says that they can still take advantage of the investment tax credit if in fact they own or they're buying the panel. So it's an interesting discussion, John and Marshall. And I just think we need to tease this out a little bit more. The other problem we have, and I'll be real quick, is that we don't have a solar statute, a community solar statute in Michigan like they do in Minnesota. And so the community solar projects that currently exist in Michigan are because a utility has chosen to get involved and voluntarily work with community members to develop one, whether it's Lansing Board of Water and Light with Michigan Energy Options, whether it's Cherryland Solar up in the Traverse City area, they put something together. And I just was on a call today that Leonce up in the UP, it's a small little town with 3,000 people, and they have their own municipal power plant, but they put community solar. And so they're just different variations of it. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, that Lance, I was on that call. That was a cool project. That was fun to hear.
I agree. We need to, and that's why I agree with you, Marshall, that Lansing Board of Water and Light, we need to figure them out a little bit more, because, they're community controlled, and, the mayor of Lansing and, Andy Shore is a part of it, and so we might be able to leverage something where they may be willing to get more involved with these types of projects somehow.
Marshall, are they giving you true net metering?
That's part of the thing I kind of alluded to in the PowerPoint. I might have got lost that it's been a really difficult process. So we haven't hunkered down on what our true net metering is yet. So I'm really, really curious as to what happens. I just got on my desk today the 4 individuals that I need to we need to all get up on the roof at the same time to be able to get our true metering. So it's just a mess.
Right, you're not turned on yet, but when you are turned on, are you going to pay as much for electricity as they pay you?
I think that's what I got to still figure out.
You're not sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Last I knew, because things change, who knows? It was a while back. But last I knew, Lansing Board of Water and Light still had what we call true net metering, so that the credit was at the retail rate. But again, I haven't had any conversations with them recently, so that could change at any time. Because as probably everybody on the call knows, is since municipal utilities can, their boards can change things. There's a board of directors that runs the local utility. They're not regulated by the state. But last I knew, they still had true net metering. There's other municipal co-op or municipal utilities that have still true net metering, but yeah, it's I don't think there's an investor-owned utility that still has true net metering, but or they won't eventually because of the distributed generation tariffs that are coming. But Marshall, I got a question for you. You've done a lot of interesting things. Have you had any contact with other housing co-ops at other universities or other types of housing cooperatives around the state about what you're doing or what they might be doing?
Yeah, thanks for asking. That's part of the beauty of co-ops is I think it's Principle 6, cooperation amongst cooperatives. So as the story is starting to get told more, I suspect others are going to start reaching out. And so on an individual basis, because I've been so involved with the project, I have talked to other co-ops. Our co-op is part of a larger network called NASCO, North American Students of Cooperation. And it's really the largest collective in the world of its sort. There's over 1,000 different co-ops that come together annually, typically in Ann Arbor is where the national NASCO conference is. It was actually in Austin, Texas 2 years ago, and I got to go and I had a broken foot, but it was still an awesome time down in Austin. And I talked to tons of people there, and Madison Community Co-ops, they've talked to us about what we're doing. And there's actually there's a California solar co-op that is doing some work. So I got to actually reach out to them and share what we're doing. Berkeley student co-ops have reached out. So we have had some people reach out intrigued on what we're doing. And I think once we can really hunker down what net metering we have and a financing program, if you will, I think it'll really be easier to share our story and replicate ultimately.
Hey, Marshall, you mentioned dryers maybe that you replaced as part of appliances, and wondered what type you ended up with for that.
I don't have the models. I know our vice president of facilities at the time had done the crunching and chose the energy efficient models. I don't have the models off the top of my head, though. I could get that to you if you were further interested.
Are they heat pump dryers or are they conventional?
Just electric still.
Okay.
Okay, Marshall, this is kind of a related issue, with obviously, if we're going to be successful in becoming carbon free, we have to electrify lots of stuff. And I wonder if, that's been discussed by your co-op about, I assume you have furnaces and maybe appliances that use natural gas. Has there been discussion about, I would think what would make sense is at the time of replacement, something breaks down, you might go electric. Has that kind of been talked about at all to like, maybe you go to a heat pump once your natural gas furnace breaks, something like that?
It has been talked about. Thankfully and not thankfully, we haven't come to a point where we've had to replace, something that big.
Right.
It's a pretty big capital needs improvement, but we have talked about that. And as this project further develops, we have a really interesting develop opportunity. So on White Hills Drive in East Lansing, we own a house, 127 White Hills, that's called Bauer Cooperative. And right next door is a duplicate building, 131 White Hills. And the idea is we're currently in holding pattern to where we're going to purchase that building in the next several years. And there's a real neat opportunity to make what we're calling the rainbow connection. And it's south-facing, and it could be a huge solar installation on top of that connection. We're working with an architect right now to potentially, and I would love to see it just blow up, where the furnace next door in the new building is going to need to be replaced. So that would be an opportune time to try this idea of a heat pumps, and it's going to need all new windows. So it could be a really, really neat opportunity for the utility. I mean, I would love to enter a power purchase agreement or some sort of model for BWL. Haven't gauged their interest all the way, but that's a pie in the sky idea, I guess, for an idea like that.
Other questions from anybody? Unmute yourself if you got a question.
And Marshall, you were talking before about trying to capture whatever you're saving currently and try to reinvest that. It sounded to me like you wanted to say, what have we been spending on utilities so far? Like historically, each year we have this much in our budget. and you wanted to try to maybe reserve that. This is what we've been spending. We're going to spend some now to improve our efficiency with solar stuff or other infrastructure, furnaces, water heaters, clothes dryers, things like that. And you wanted to say, whatever I'm saving off of my original budget, I'm going to reinvest that into more things. Is that what you're trying to do? Like to try to keep?
Yep, precisely. Yep, precisely. And yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay.
Yeah, I live in Meridian Township. Marshall knows this, and the township has a that sort of program where energy savings are calculated and then put in to do additional energy conservation projects, or we've used it, for talked about with solar projects and stuff like that too. So yeah, it takes some calculation, but that's okay because you want to be monitoring your utility bills anyway and kind of seeing how much you're saving. So then it's just a kind of an accounting issue, right? Okay, we calculated we saved so much, and we kind of transfer maybe all of it or maybe even just a part of it into a fund for further investments. It's kind of a nice approach.
Yeah, and it's gonna, I mean, part of the hard part is democratically doing it, right? So
Right.
we have new members in this house that are getting all these savings now. So it's like, no, we gotta take those back from you, and
Right.
redistribute. So that's part of the challenge as well, So that's
Right. Yeah.
not the math part, a little
Right.
harder.
The politics is more, yeah, right.
Marshall,
usual.
have you thought about PACE financing at all? Are you familiar with PACE financing?
I am, and I had talked in probably 2017. I had talked. I forget who was running it at the time.
It was probably Andy Levin or Corey Connolly. Now it's Bali who's running it, Lean and Green, Michigan.
Yeah, I saw he just took over. And so there was very, very introductory talks, but we didn't really have much on the ground. But now that we actually have tangible assets and we can replicate, I would love to re-engage in that. Yeah,
I think it's because it's a form of financing which is attached to the house. And so just like you said a little while ago that, the house members move on, but the solar project remains attached to the house, which is the absolute key to PACE financing that's anchored to the home. And whoever moves in has to continue to, fulfill that obligation. But I think it's a way, and I'm not an expert, but I think it's a way of getting relatively low cost financing because it is first on the pecking order in terms of debt on a home. And so I think it's something that we should talk about.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think you're right in that there is because we do have staff, right? So we do have continuity that stays, and so I think I do hear that it could be a good opportunity, and we do have a comment. What is PACE financing? If someone wants to give a quick rundown on what it officially is and where we can find more information.
I'm gonna see if John Sarver can do a better job than I can.
And Tom can help me out on this because Tom Stanton was involved with financing for a long time. But basically, John, you mentioned the key issue, which is the financing that goes with the house, it goes with the property. But there is Lean and Green Michigan has been kind of working on a variety of financing projects, and local governments and counties, cities can actually bond perhaps to provide a funding pool that can be used for these sorts of projects. And so there's a lot of communities now in Michigan, Oakland County, I believe, Ingham County, the city of Ann Arbor, that kind of authorize PACE financing. Tom, why don't you jump in here? What would you add to that description?
Well, the acronym stands for Property Assessed Clean Energy. It means that you're going to be able to take out a loan to do all kinds of whatever makes sense for your building. and then you're going to pay it back over time on the property tax bill. And because it's tied to the property tax bill, for a business, it doesn't have to look like a balance sheet lien against their business. It's just paying the property tax. The deals are always structured so that the monthly savings is greater than the monthly repayment. That's not necessarily 100% guaranteed, but it goes into all the calculations to try to make sure that you'll get monthly savings starting month one. And so you'll always pay a lower utility bill. And once it's all paid off, then you get the remaining life of those devices. And it allowed people to stretch the financing to anywhere up to 12 to 15 to maybe even 20 years. But in Michigan, when it got started, it was only for commercial buildings. It wasn't for residential. So getting the counties to pass the ordinance that would enable it to be used for residential is yet another step. There are states where it is okay and open to residential, but in Michigan now, the alternative is Michigan Saves, which works in very much the similar way, but it's not tied to the property tax
Tom,
assessment.
do you
You
think,
just have to
do you
make a
think,
payment.
I mean, maybe this is a question for Marshall. Are co-ops organized as like a limited liability corporation? I mean, could that be arguably be considered commercial?
So this is where things get so,
Yes, I think it could be.
it presently is, but we live in an interesting model because we actually are working with we're working on legislation long and the short to be property tax exempt potentially. So when this housing cooperative models were founded back in the 70s, they were actually granted property tax exemption, and other states have done this for this type of housing model because affordable housing provider. So we're not there yet. So take a step back. We are, yes, John, that is correct. That's how we are at the moment. But we could be switching to a 501c3 nonprofit model in this new year.
An interesting thing about PACE financing is you can take advantage of PACE financing whether you are paying property tax or not. So even municipal buildings or churches that don't pay any property tax can still finance their energy efficiency improvements and solar on the roof using a PACE financing mechanism.
That's good to hear. That was my next question for
I did
you.
not know that. That's interesting.
Interesting discussion. Other questions people may have?
John, I was really interested in John Gordley. I was interested in your questions. Where do you live? What city?
I live in Lima Township, which is just north of Chelsea.
Okay.
And
I thought I recognized you from talking about project in Chelsea before.
yeah,
Right now, this whole question about how can we change the way that we buy and pay for our energy efficiency improvements? To me, this is like a holy grail of how we're going to make much more rapid forward progress and make that forward progress available to more and more and more citizens, you know, all the way down to what we would consider very low income. So I encourage people to stay engaged in that conversation. Right now, Michigan Energy Options has a technical assistance grant from the National Renewable Energy Laboratory to be working up different community solar models that could work with or without a participating utility. Michigan Energy Options did the project in East Lansing, and they literally had to work 6 years with Lansing Board of Water and Light to get permission to do it once. You know, we're all very, very frustrated by how slow it can be to make forward progress when we're surrounded by not so enthusiastic utilities. Legislature that won't step out legally. So, you know, I think looking for some of these alternative business models and options makes a tremendous amount of sense.
Yeah, well, I'm stuck in DTE territory. Chelsea is an interesting case because they do have their own power company, but I live outside that territory. But I've said a number of times that I would love to be able to sell electricity to my neighbors. We have frequent power failures here, and I have batteries in my house, so I can keep going when the power fails. You know, if the rules were different, there should be some way for me to feed some electricity to my neighbors, but it's not allowed.
There's even workarounds for that if you wanted to go to the extent of doing it. You probably might not be able to ever get permission to run a wire and send electrons. But that doesn't mean that you can't put batteries on wheels and keep batteries charged and then help your neighbor run their emergency uses off of batteries on wheels. So, you know, there's many ways to skin this cat. And I love what Marshall's doing with recycling batteries so that the batteries can be had at way lower cost to begin with.
Yeah, and just a little point on that is it's really astronomical, the savings. I mean, so these batteries upcycled is about a good cell is it's about, I can do it for about 25 cents a cell. And if you were go to buy a brand new cell, you're looking at anywhere, you know, $2 to $10 a cell. So the economies of scale are very, very lucrative.
How long does it,
cycle market?
what is the expected life of reused batteries?
So I'm still in that project testing. I suspect a very long time. So when you're redoing it, when you're reconfiguring the batteries, you're putting them in a cycle so that they usually never drain all the way. So they don't use a whole life. So their lives are milliamp hours. I don't know how familiar people are with battery chemistry, but when they're paralleled in such a way, they don't use a whole life cycle. So we're not sure. The long and the short, it's such a new project, and really worldwide, I don't think we know yet. I think it's showing encouraging results though, for sure.
We have a former board member, Chris Hunter, who runs a battery business in Grand Rapids, and she started off reusing old car batteries, lead acid batteries, and repurposing them. I just talked to her this past week because the energy office that John Sarver used to run, they're interested in supporting projects on how to reuse electric batteries in cars. And Chris told me that they're moving in that direction as well. And so if you're interested, I could certainly set you up to have a conversation with Chris about what they're doing, and maybe she can compare notes and be supportive of some sort.
Oh yeah, please connect. I connect with battery people probably once or twice a week, working on different things. I get more hits on the batteries than pretty much anything I do. So it's starting to take off, and I follow a lot of DIY battery groups in different avenues, and yeah, the Nissan Leafs in particular are a hot ticket item for home power wallers.
I think Dale Klein's going to be happy to hear you're interested in doing it your own, because that's his business model, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right, Dale?
Yeah, so I have a leaf pack that I took out of my car, a 24 kilowatt hour pack, which is in good condition because I put a bigger pack in the car. And so I need to get around to putting that other pack in the garage for storage. I have so far just big lead acid batteries for storage.
Relevant to this conversation, John Berry from Ann Arbor got funding from National Renewable Energy Lab for a project he calls Solar 20. And by that, he means they're trying to make the battery controller system so that the batteries will last 20 years, just like the solar panels will last 20 years. they've been sending solar panels out to the incredibly remote areas in Guatemala and other countries where once the battery fails, then the person who's got it, 1 watt, 2 watts, 5 watts, 7 watts, has got a dead system. So they need to be able to distribute the battery and the solar panel and expect them both to last for at least 20 years. And he's working on the circuitry to make that happen. So a lot of what we think we know about batteries isn't true anymore. You know, the manufacturers are already way ahead of what we think we know today. So this idea that you're going to buy batteries and they're going to fail, you know, is old school. We have to get that out of our thinking, because just like what Tesla was advertising, you know, they're talking about batteries that'll go through 1 million cycles without ever degrading and without ever failing.
Yeah, the new Tesla battery technology is incredible. It's almost unreal. I don't know if anyone watched their battery day, but their plans are incredible. They even have their own type of lithium extraction and land in Nevada that they currently have, that they're piloting, where they sift and re-enter it back in the land. It's pretty fascinating.
Makes you wonder then, there's a big article today in the New York Times on how Tesla car batteries occasionally catch on fire. And so you wonder whether the oil companies got New York Times to plant a story in order to try and, you know, throw some water on the whole embracing battery technology. So
Interesting. I gotta look that story up. I hadn't seen that, but yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Well, internal combustion engines catch fire too, more often than batteries do.
good to know there, John.
Any, we're getting up to 8 o'clock. Any last 1 or 2 questions from anybody?
I had one other one. Marshall, all of the bills for the different houses, are they all billed on one bill, or is each house independent and paid separately?
Yep, each house is independent and separate. So, yep, there's 17 houses, 17 different electricity bills, which, you know, it might add to the confusion that we had. You know, that's part of that's part of the hard part, right? Is like taking the savings away from that individual's bill and putting it towards the whole, rather than so yeah, this is part of the politics and part of the challenge, I guess, to our project. But yeah, appreciate everyone's questions and attending. This was fun.
Well, thank you, Marshall. This has been very interesting, the presentation and the discussion, and this has been great. So next week, John Freeman is going to talk to us about state legislation, which will be a little different My Solar story, but a lot was tried to happen last year. And so, they're in a brand new session now, and legislators are just getting committee assignments and, you know, doing whatever they do to get organized. But John's going to kind of give us a preview and overview of what we might anticipate this coming year, and what some of the issues are. Looking forward to that. Yep. And well, thank you everybody for coming, and hope to see you next Thursday. Take care.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Thanks a lot. And please reach out if you have any more questions or want to get involved. Like I said, we have